of the Hawthorne Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission for Wednesday, October the 20th, 2021 at 6 p.m. is now called to order. 6:05. Pursuant to Executive Order N2520 and N2920, members of the Planning Commission and staff may participate in this meeting via video link, Zoom, and/or teleconference. In the interest of maintaining appropriate social distancing and to protect the health and safety of the Commission, staff, and public from exposure to COVID-19, this will not be an in-person meeting, and the council chambers will not be open for this meeting. Members of the public may observe this meeting on the City of Hawthorne website or YouTube. The Planning Commission encourages public comments by phone and/or written email on the agenda of any topic, which also includes public hearings. Members of the public who wish to participate in the meeting by comments can participate by calling the Planning Department at 310-349-2970 before the close of the oral communications or a public hearing. Please note that you may be put on hold to get a busy signal if there are speakers making comment to the Planning Commission ahead of you, as a call will be answered in the order received. In addition, you may offer your comments through mail at planning@cityofhawthorne.org. Emails must be received prior to 5:30 on the day of the meeting, and the comments will be read up to the 3-minute duration allowed for public comments. So at this time, I would like to have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Place your right hand on your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now the roll call of the Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission.
Okay, Chairperson Smith,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Al-Shanadli,
Present.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Present.
Commissioner Caraballo,
Present.
thank you, and Commissioner Richard.
Present.
All present.
This is the time for the public to address the Planning Commission on items not on the public hearing portion of the agenda. After obtaining permission to proceed by the presiding officer, speakers should first state their full name and address for the record, although it's not required. The speaker shall limit their address to 3 minutes. All remarks shall be to the Planning Commission as a body, not to any particular commissioner. Any public hearings that are discriminatory, defamatory, or otherwise not protected speech will not be considered, consented to, or otherwise adopted by the Planning Commission in its deliberations and findings. As a courtesy to others, please silence cell phones and other electronic devices. Planning Commission strives to treat all participants with civility, and we ask that you do the same. Planning Commission Airport Zoning Consent Calendar. There are no items. Recess.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should leave the oral communications open just a little bit longer to give anybody an opportunity to phone in.
Sure.
And remind them that the phone number is 310-349-2970. I think another 15 seconds or so should do. Okay, nobody seems to be joining us, so we're good.
Hold on just a second, please. Okay. Oh yeah, one of my lights went out. Okay. Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission consent calendar. Are there any items?
There are no items.
Recess Airport Zoning Commission. Planning Commission consent calendar. There are no items. Continued public hearings. There are no items. New public hearings.
We
So-
have, go ahead.
I'm sorry. You're having a problem with hearing my voice? Let me know. Zone Text Amendment 2021 ZA02. I didn't get the script tonight, so Greg, you'll have to help
Oh,
me.
no problem. I was, actually, I thought I had the entire packet open, but I just had the agenda open, so I'm gonna have to sort of wing it here. This is for zoning code amendment 2021 ZA02. You've seen this before. It was brought to you, I think, in June of this year. This is to amend the code relating to mixed use standards. At the time that you saw it, it was for the what was it called? You have to forgive me for this. That was the, sorry, I really need to have that thing in front of me. It didn't cover everything that this one covers. When I was getting it prepared for the city council, I recognized that it didn't have the mixed use. I think it was the mixed use overlay or something in it. So what we had to do is we had to just go back and bring it back to you again to add that little bit of extra. And if I recall, there were only 4 minor changes that I made to this. So it's really quite minor. In the report, you'll see that it's just the addition of a few words here and there, or the striking of a few words. And it's just to make it consistent with what was already approved in June, so that we can move forward with this change that essentially does one thing. It makes a strong preference for vertical mixed use, which is commercial on the ground floor and residential on the upper floors, as opposed to horizontal mixed use, which can be commercial in the front or on the side and residential in the back or on another side, which was a direction that was given from the city council back in April of this year or last year. And in the case, in the case of this amendment, these 4 changes are all that were being made, and it's really quite a minor amendment. So I'm asking that you please consider approving it again with this 4 additional changes. I think Maria's coming to my rescue with a copy of it. Thank you, Maria. Okay. So I'm going to tell you exactly what the changes are just to get it onto the record here. Okay, we're adding changes to chapter 1729, which is the mixed commercial zone. Okay, we already had the mixed use overlay. So 1729.10 in the purpose, we're removing 4 words, or building site area. So it becomes specific to a particular building. In 1729.040B, we are removing 4 words again, sum of all structures, because again, if we're doing vertical mixed use, there should be primarily 1 structure. And we don't want to imply that there will be more than 1 structure. And in number 3, we are removing the distinction between setbacks that are different for commercial and for residential, because if it's a vertical mixed use project, then it would have 1 standard setback. And then number 4, we're making an adjustment to 1729.050 by removing the words "or building site," which makes it specific to the building itself rather than the site. Very minor changes, but they will have a meaningful change in the sense that vertical mixed use will be clearly favored. Will not eliminate the possibility of a horizontal mixed use, but it will make that much less common. And so that concludes the report. sorry for the lack of preparation there. I thought I had what I needed and I didn't. And next time I'll be better prepared. So if you have any questions, I'm now prepared to answer them. And other than that, my recommendation is that we approve this again, and then I can move it on to the city council.
Okay, is there any questions from
I
commission?
do. I have a question, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you're saying that horizontal would not, it doesn't mean that horizontal will be completely out of the picture where it can be done at sometimes, but correct me if I'm wrong, I did read that where horizontal would be prohibited. So what exactly was meant by that? Does that mean that even if they wanted to, they can't, and they would have to opt out for vertical?
Yeah, I'm going to try to remember which one it's allowed in and which one it's never allowed in. It's now 1729 is the mixed commercial classification, and the other one that you already approved was 1787, which was the mixed use overlay zone. In one, it's absolutely prohibited, and I believe that's in 1787, which is the mixed overlay. And in 1729, it's still an option, but it is now disfavored.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the way I read it, it sounded like it might be the other way around.
It might be. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get that answer as fast as I can. I didn't change what you had approved before. If you had made it prohibited before, then that would have been in the 87 or the mixed use overlay zone. But if you had only made it disfavored in that time around, then that's where it was done.
Okay. Yeah, it might have been in the June 21st one, if I'm not mistaken. It could have been. Yeah.
Yeah, because the information in this 1729, it sounds like it's prohibiting like the separation of residential and commercial uses and only allowing for the vertical mixed use. And then the 87, it looks like it provides both horizontal or vertical.
Thank you for that clarification.
And then I did have a question. It looks like maybe I couldn't find any other location on the zoning map that 1729 only, it looks like it only applies to like the Hawthorne Mall. Are there any other locations that have that zoning designation?
Yeah, there are. Let's see. Make sure I get this right. So 1729 again is the mixed commercial classification. It's only the mall. It's only the mall? Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah, you're right. It's only the mall.
Okay.
It's amazing how much I forget after 5 years.
It's amazing how much I forget after one day.
It'll come back to me though.
Are there any more questions from the commissioners?
Yes, I do have a question. Greg, I don't, I guess I was absent in one of the last meetings where some of this was discussed, but in general, the difference between vertical mixed use and horizontal mixed use is that horizontal, it can basically take on the entire site and not have to be within one single building. Is that correct?
That would describe horizontal, yeah.
Okay.
The example that was built in the city is down on Rosecrans, where there's a McDonald's that made the commercial portion and residential behind it. Not one of our best mixed use projects, but that qualified as, technically as a mixed use project because there was a commercial component and residential component. And that was horizontal.
And the horizontal is essentially being discouraged for smaller project sites and more acceptable for larger sites like the Hawthorne Mall site. Is that accurate?
No, I think it's actually being discouraged in most cases. It's being discouraged or prohibited in every case. Let's put it that way. It's definitely not the preferred option. It's difficult to get the kind of a atmosphere, or the kind of activation of the street that we're looking for when you're doing a horizontal development. It still sort of caters to an automobile-centered development on the commercial side.
Yeah,
So,
it's not. It doesn't achieve the intended spirit of mixed use, essentially.
that's what we're finding. It wasn't what we expected, but that's what we're finding.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. No more questions. Thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions by the commission?
I think I have another one. So for the floor area ratio for 1729, is that for both the commercial and residential?
That's a good question. Floor area ratio does not usually include the residential, but I'm not sure how we were doing it with these mixed use projects. That's something that I'd have to go back and check. If any of the other planners know how we're doing that, please feel free to jump in. I just don't recall right now.
Can you repeat the question, Commissioner Caravello, real quick?
If the floor area for 1729, if that includes commercial and residential.
For 1725?
No, 29.
29, I'm sorry,
So we're
1729.
talking about section 3 of the ordinance.
229. I'm trying to remember.
I'm
Floor area
thinking,
ratio should not exceed it.
Yeah.
It's based on the gross project area
Yeah.
inside of the face of the exterior walls of the building. So, and then it does talk about the commercial area, mixed use development. It cannot be less than 40% of the ground floor area.
yeah, well, based on the
90%.
number of two
Yeah.
2.5 times, I'd say it'd have to include both.
Yes, I believe so.
Otherwise,
Yeah, it does include both in the lot area, from my understanding.
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, this is a city initiated amendment, so there's no
there's no
real-
applicant except us.
Okay. Could I make a suggestion that we provide staff direction to further research the matter, modify the draft language, and return with a revised ordinance?
Absolutely. Which language do you want modified?
Well, I think the question they've had about mixed use, that's clear. Or if there's something else that staff want, the commissioners are confused on. If not, then I'll call for a motion to
Yeah, the only clarification I heard was by Commissioner Caravello about what area it includes. I don't know if that merits.
I think that it would be fine to make the motion to include instruction to clarify that point.
Oh, okay.
That would be a very small textual change. And we can bring, excuse me, we can put that back on, or bring that back to you to show it to you, but we can also still move it forward if there's a motion to approve.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll
And-
second. Oh, sorry.
Wait a second.
I was just letting you guys know that this means that because this change really just focus on the Hawthorne Mall, is that for future development we want to see a complete I guess vertical commercial mixed use site at this location. So I guess, when you're thinking about, approving this, that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, that's how I understood it. I mean,
Okay.
if you've ever been, I'm sure you've been to Pasadena, across from the convention center, there's a mixed use project that's vertical, not horizontal. And to me, I prefer those definitely. So even if it just means that we're limiting that to the Hawthorne Mall site, I'm okay with that.
I would second what Ruba had to say there. I'm glad we did use the Rosecrans project as an example, not particularly my favorite idea or iteration of mixed use, to see a fast food restaurant at the corner and then we have housing on the back and we call that mixed use. It seems like we're still using, it's not the most efficient way to use the space, put it that way. It doesn't seem like it's getting to what we're looking for with mixed use. So I like this amendment.
Mr.
And,
Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
well, I did have one more question. So with this current code, would it allow, say, like a portion of the mall to be all commercial and then one portion to be mixed use, like as long as it's vertical?
Yes, because the requirement is that 40% of the ground floor be commercial. That's a minimum, so you can go more than that.
Okay. All right, yeah, that's all my questions.
Yeah, it's not a maximum.
To ask a question now that you mentioned that, when you say that 40% minimum has to be there, just hearing me on this question, thinking about how the Hawthorne Mall used to look a while ago, we had an attached like a theater that was kind of put as part of the mall, wasn't actually inside. Would they be able to do something like that? Like say we had a theater here, but there was no apartment or anything else above it. It's just its own structure. And then would they be allowed to do something along those lines?
Yeah, I don't think that we would discourage a theater because they didn't put housing above it, because who would want to live above a theater?
That's fair. That's what I was.
I mean, we would try to be as realistic as possible about this. But yeah, some uses are not conducive to vertical mixed use. And if it's a desirable use that doesn't otherwise spoil the whole concept of vertical mixed use, I think we would find a way to accommodate.
Okay, with no other questions, and I make a motion, and it's been seconded, I believe.
Yes, okay, so motion was made by Chairperson Smith and seconded by Vice Chairperson Al-Shanabli. So roll call will be Chairperson Smith
Yes.
and Vice Chairperson Al-Shanabli.
Yes.
Okay, and Commissioner Richard,
Yes.
Commissioner Caravello,
Yes.
and Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. Now recess the Planning Commission, call back to order the Airport Zoning Commission. Airport Zoning Commission consent calendar. There are no items. Airport Zoning Commission new continued public hearings. No items. Now I'll call back to order the Planning Commission concurrently with the Airport Zoning Commission. Non-public hearing items. Number one will be a presentation by Sean Bless Deputy City Attorney on Senate Bills SB 8, SB 9, SB 10.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me get the PowerPoint up and share my screen. Oops. Somehow I have two presentations open. All right, can you see the SB 8, 9, and 10?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I kind of went a little text heavy on this, as Greg commented earlier. My reasoning behind that was, these aren't simple bills, and if you want to reference the slides later and not want to watch the whole presentation over again, it would be easier for you just to do that. So I'm not going to read everything, every line in there, but this way, if you have any questions or at a later date and want to review it, everything is right there. And in theory, you wouldn't have to actually read the giant bill itself. All right, so SB 8, 9, and 10, and also if I'm going too fast or anything, please let me know. SB 8 serves simply as an update to the Housing Crisis Act, the HCA. A lot of it is textual, theirs to therefore kind of changes. One of the changes it makes is the term housing development project. It adds things that are included in that, one of which is non-discretionary approvals, SB 9 essentially. Ones that are both non-discretionary and discretionary, as well as single dwelling units. Much of the changes are also dates. It's supposed to have expired in 2025. Now it's got pushed up to 2030. There's the old language, I put them together so you can kind of see. This is basically saying that housing that's been approved or development that's been approved that's kind of not made any progress within 2.5 years can be subject to later ordinances. The SBA clarification is that if it is a affordable housing project, they get an extra 1.5 years before any new ordinances or changes become required on them. The original ACA prohibited the demolishing of occupied or vacant protected units unless they were given a right of relocation benefits or first refusal. SB 8 kind of narrows that down, and it basically says that the relocation benefits are only for occupants of protected units that are lower income housing. It also clarifies that you can't claim these relocation benefits if you just happen to be using it as Airbnb a couple days before they're dozing it, which is a pretty good change, I would say. Another thing, it's exempting, you don't have to give first right of benefits or right of first refusal to if you're taking out a ADU or JADU. And oddly, if the housing is 100% reserved for low-income housing, you don't have to give relocation benefits or right of first refusal unless the occupants qualify for the new housing and there's enough room for them. So it doesn't seem like a great change, but that is what it is. This is simply saying that the old one, the cities that came under the HCA were designated as of 2021, and that remains in effect until 2025. This is saying in 2025, there'll be a new looking at all the cities, seeing which ones qualify under HCA, and that designation will last another 5 years. So just simply continuing it for another 5 years because the statute, or excuse me, the HCA was continued for 5 more years. This is discussing the density. If you're changing a zone designation and making it less intensive, there has to be another location in the city that is made more intensive, so you don't basically lose any net housing. SB is just clarifying what concurrently means. It can either be at the same time, same resolution, or if there is a housing development project that it might make things less dense, you have 180 days to make another area more dense. So again, they don't want to lose any residential capacity. All right, so now SB 9, which is the one everybody I'm sure is excited about. SB 9 has 5 sections. First 2 are really the most important. The first one is ministerial approval of 2-unit development in a single family residential zone. There are some restrictions, but not too many. Specifically local agencies are to include the newly created units in their annual housing report. Section 2 involves approval of a parcel map for an urban lot split. There's some requirements, but not too many as well. And these are also included in the report. The section 3 is just cleaning up some language in that section 4 is declaring affordable housing a statewide concern, not municipal affair, hence why this is allowed. And then just there's no reimbursement for the Constitution. So the basic restriction is the parcels needed to be in an urbanized area, urban cluster. Hawthorne is within, thank you, Greg, because I wasn't sure where to find it. Hawthorne is within Los Angeles, Long Beach, Anaheim, urbanized area. So everything is urbanized area here. As you would expect, certain areas won't fall under SB 9. Places you don't want more people, farmland, wetlands, fire zones. Now, you cannot use SB 9 if you are going to demolish a certain type of house. Now, these are single family uses, so we're talking about a house here. If the house is restricted to moderate, low, very low income, can't doze it. If it's rent controlled, can't do it. If it's been occupied for a tenant within the last 3 years. No, so it doesn't have to be a tenant that's been there for 3 years. Just if it ever was a tenant within the last 3 years, which means it's a viable rental property, can't use SB 9 to knock it down. Also, you cannot be a property where the owner exercised right under the Ellis Act, which is essentially allowing someone to kick someone out and take a house off the rental market, presumably because they want to live there. So the idea is you can't use that act to kick somebody out and then start building a new place, 2 places really. Cannot demolish the entire house, has to be 25% left unless a local ordinance says it's okay, or again, it hasn't been occupied by a tenant in 3 years. The idea behind it is that this is your personal house that you're living in, that you're taking it down. Another common sense, it can't be a historic house. They don't want you knocking that down. So locals, governments can't really put a lot of restrictions on this. So one of them they can is an objective zoning standards, but those zoning standards, subdivision, et cetera, cannot frustrate SB 9 in any way, can't be designed to get around this, and it can't create anything that's less than 800 square feet. Also, setback requirements, if it's an existing structure and it's the same size, so if they take the existing same dimensions but make it 2 units, you can't then have a setback requirement for an existing structure. You can do a setback if they're knocking it all down and building 2 great big new things, but 4 feet on either side and the back, and again, can't be less than 800 square feet. This is defining what objective zoning standards, as I'm sure you know, it's non-discretionary. The big thing about SB 9 is there is very little to no, actually there is no discretion involved. It's ministerial. So they're very clear that nothing you do can make it de facto discretionary. So it has to be uniformly verified, reference some outside benchmark. And then it defines what 2 units are, which is if you're building 2 units or you're adding 1. All right, so we can require 1 off-street parking space per unit unless it's within half a mile of a high-quality transit corridor or major transit stop, which a lot of Hawthorne is, and if there might be a car share vehicle around the block. And you cannot reject the application solely because it's a joined structure, as long as it meets building codes and you can convey 2 separate units. That's good enough. So, can you deny it? You can if the building officer makes a written finding by a preponderance of the evidence of a specific and adverse impact upon public health and safety or the physical environment. And even if you find that, there has to be no feasible method to mitigate those issues. So if it seems very difficult to deny it, it's by design. these are not for short-term rentals. So you cannot start building an Airbnb empire. So also this is saying that you're not required to ministerially approve an ADU or JADU by using this. There are separate sections listed below that deal with those. So this is not just to add ADUs, this is to add a housing unit, a duplex. And then the coastal act isn't changed, which I don't really think applies to us anyway. So section 2 is the parcel map. It allows for an urban lot split if you meet certain requirements. Now there's 2 sets of requirements. One is for the original lot and one is for the 2 newly created lots. And you're gonna see a lot of duplicates from section 1. So again, single family residential zone, it's an urbanized area, can't be in wetlands, fire zones, restricted. You cannot doze a low-income housing, rent-controlled housing, or housing that's had a tenant within 3 years to lot split. Can't use the Ellis Act, and again, cannot destroy a historical house or district. There's 2 unique ones just to this one, which are that the parcel cannot have been a result of a previous SB9. So you can't use your infinite dividing cells and turn 1 lot into 16 lots. It's 1 lot that's split into 2 and that's it. So they can't be further subdivided. And this is kind of an interesting one. If you own 2 houses next to each other, you cannot split both of them. It has to be one or the other. You cannot have 2 parcels that you own and create 4. And the other one that I kind of find funny is you can't act in concert with an owner of an adjacent lot. So you can't get together with your neighbors and start subdividing all your houses and create an apartment empire. But of course, how you're going to say act in concert, one person is just going to say, oh, well, I saw him do it and I was inspired. And then that's kind of gets around that. For the new lot, it has to be roughly equal with each other, the 2 of them, but one cannot be less than 40%. So the biggest difference can be 60-40, but preferably equal size with each other. And they can be no smaller than 1,200 square feet, which can be lowered by an ordinance. Again, ministerially approved, no discretion. It must comply with the Subdivision Map Act, but SB9 takes priority in certain situations, except for you cannot conditionally approve it, or condition of approval to add a right-of-way or on-site improvement, notwithstanding the Subdivision Map Act, but you can't do that per SB9. So these things are copied word for word from section 1. The same thing, objective zoning standards, you can impose those, setback requirement. And again, once you have all those objective standards, you cannot create a unit of less than 800 square feet on either lot. And this is also if the lot is non-conforming in its use, you cannot condition the approval of an SB9 lot split on them correcting that. You can't. There's no condition. Again, it's supposed to be very little oversight. It's just granted. These are the exact same impossible standards from before of written findings, specific and adverse, and no feasible methods of mitigation. So city can require public services and facilities easements on the property. It can require access to right-of-way. It can require parking unless, and it's the exact same as section 1, high quality transit corridor. Now, again, it must be required that they are used for residential only. So they can't be mixed use. You can't do a lot split, create 2 units and make a restaurant in one of them. They have to be in a single family zone and it has to be for residential. Now here's the interesting part. The applicant has to sign an affidavit saying that they intend to occupy one of the housing units for a minimum of 3 years. Okay, so one of the housing units created by this lot split, you have to sign an affidavit saying that you will live there. The intention being that these are all going to be owner occupied. But there's no penalty for not doing that. So you file the affidavit, 6 months later, you move out and you rent out that unit. There's really no penalty in the code or in the SB9 for doing that. And the city can't add additional and can't add anything additional to it. So there can't be more requirements for owner occupancy. It's just that affidavit and that's it. And again, it's not for rental. It's not for Airbnb. Same thing, the junior ADU and ADUs are governed by their own section. This is not a ministerial granting of those. And it defines what a unit is. Can't reject solely because it's the same structure and the Coastal Act. So there is an incentive built into SB 9. Both sections 1 and 2 state the local agency may adopt it as an ordinance. So why would anyone do that? Well, the reason is that if you do adopt it as an ordinance, projects implemented will not be considered projects under CEQA. So everybody is required to follow SB 9. It's passed. It's a statewide law. But if you don't adopt it as an ordinance, you do CEQA like normal for the whole thing. But if you adopt it as an ordinance, you can bypass CEQA and not have to do all of the intensive studies and environmental impact reports that CEQA requires. So SB 10 is optional. All right. So cities may adopt an ordinance to zone a parcel for 10 units of residential density per parcel. The city can dictate the height. The parcels, these specific parcels have to be in transit-rich areas or urban infill sites, which are defined later. This is, there's a time limit on this. If the cities want to do this, they have to adopt this by January 1st, 2029. And if they do adopt it, it survives the expiration of SB 10. And I promise I'm almost done for those of you falling asleep. Any projects, again, if this is adopted, any projects related to this will not be considered projects under CEQA. These are the definitions of those words. I won't read everything, but if you want to reference what a transit area is, high quality bus corridor, etc., a lot of it is Hawthorne. You know, a lot of buses, a lot of bus stops. That's what it requires. And if that's what it is, you can zone it for SB 10. The obvious restrictions are it can't be in a fire zone. We don't want more people in fire zones. And you cannot zone SB 10 land that's publicly owned and designated for open spaces or parks and recreation. These are explanations of how to adopt it. It's got to be, there's got to be designation and declaration. You can't overturn a local initiative unless it's by 2/3 majority. And overall, as with everything, you cannot reduce the density of the subject parcel. This is explaining that you can't get sneaky with it and make more than 10 residential units because it's zoned for SB 10. And so someone just comes along and wants to put 14 units and say, oh, well, we're immune to CEQA, you don't have to do it. No, if you're more than 10 residential units, you got to do CEQA, you got to do all the normal things just because the parcel is zoned for SB 10. And it is important to note that if you do a 10 units and you put 2 ADUs, it still counts as SB 10. And also the developers can't be clever and try and subdivide everything into 10 units. So if there are any questions, and for those of you awake, you can ask Greg.
Oh, anybody going? Go for it.
Okay. The only question that I have is for Senate Bill 9, Sections 1 and 2. The original parcels must also meet the specific requirements of, they cannot be specific types of land designated in Government Code 65913.4.
Yes.
And one of those are earthquake fault zones.
Yes.
So I just want to know, like if I'm not mistaken, the Inglewood Fault runs under Hawthorne Boulevard, and the San Andreas Fault is, of course, 40 miles away east of Hawthorne. So does that affect this in any way?
I would say yes. If I'd have to look, I mean, Greg might know better than I do, but if it's earthquake fault zone, then they don't want more people on it. Greg?
There are designated fault zones that the state, I think geologist has mapped, and we'd have to check those maps. I don't know if any of them specifically run through Hawthorne. I know that there are faults here, but they may not be mapped as active faults.
I think a long time ago, I
Mhm.
think in 2009, there was a mention of the Inglewood Fault and that it wasn't active. And I think 2 days before we had the meeting, there was an
Mhm.
earthquake on it. And recently there have been there have been earthquakes along the Inglewood Fault,
Yeah.
which runs under Hawthorne.
Yeah, but it would
Where
have to be, it would have to be a mapped fault
Okay.
by the state for us to be able to do that.
Okay.
And if it's active and it's, and I know it has been active
Yes.
in recent years, it's likely that they have added it to the map. But we can check.
Okay. Thank you. That's my only question. Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Excellent work.
I'm hope I didn't put everyone to sleep.
No, it wasn't
No,
that
no.
bad.
It was good. It was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, very helpful, thank you.
And I can email it to you, everybody, so that way, like I said, you can reference it, and it's dense, but a lot less dense than the actual bill.
That would be great. Thank
And
you.
we're going to have at least two, possibly more ordinances that are being drafted in response to SB 9. One of them will be prior to the end of the year. I don't think that one has to go before the Planning Commission, but I do believe we'll bring it as an informational item, just so that you can see how we're responding. But the trickiest part for planning and zoning is the objective zoning standards and objective subdivision standards and objective design standards, all that kind of stuff. You'll be seeing that for sure. That's going to be much more difficult because to truly make standards objective is extremely difficult. So we'll be working on that for probably several, honestly years, but probably months before the first one comes out.
Got you.
Okay. And
Oh.
my last question, can
You muted yourself, Commissioner.
yes, I apologize for that. Can this be added to the Hawthorne website, the Hawthorne City website, so that also the public is aware of this? I mean, I know the presentation is just for us to understand, and Senate bills can be very confusing, but sometimes I like the public to understand also where we're coming from and what laws we have to follow, and for them to understand.
That's a good idea.
I don't see a reason why not.
I mean, it's in the public realm now. There's no privilege now.
I'm not
Yes, of course.
copyrighting
I mean,
this.
but I mean, just for them to refer to it, or
Yeah.
you know, if they need to understand something more.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Very good
much.
idea.
Thank you.
Very good idea. We'll see to it.
Thank you.
I had 3 questions for this one and 1 question for the last one. And so, like, how will we know that it was rented for 3 years? Do we have something that would help us, like, determine that, or?
Excellent question. I don't think we do.
Yes, there would basically, I guess, in our application, we could ask, has it been rented? But
yeah,
I mean, they have, there's no repository of rental agreements. So unless we find out at some point during the application, like, oh, hey, there was a tenant, so we can reject it, there's really no way to know.
That's, yeah.
And then, after it's subdivided, can each lot have an ADU?
No. No ADUs. There's a very clear language in the SB 9 that says that there cannot be ADUs.
Or junior ADUs?
No junior ADUs either.
Okay. And then I didn't see anything that mentioned like a minimum lot size. I think there was like a 1,200 square
Yes.
feet.
Yes.
So would that mean that I guess the total original lot has to be like 2,400?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to be clear, if you were to subdivide your 2,400 square foot lot, you'd have 2 lots, and then each lot could have 2 houses. So you could get 4 out of this.
Right. And isn't the minimum, did I miss it, but wasn't the minimum 800 square feet on something?
That's the house size.
The minimum unit on each, it has to be at least 800.
Well, to be clear, you could build a smaller house. We just can't make regulations that don't allow you to build anything larger than 800. But you're free to build something smaller if you want to.
Oh, okay, so
yeah.
Explain that one more time. So you're
So we can't make the regulations so restrictive that you can't possibly build anything larger than 800 square feet.
Okay, we can't make the restrictions that you can't build anything larger than 800 square feet. Gotcha.
Yeah. So in other words, our regulations have to be liberal enough that you can build bigger than 800 square feet.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so a couple questions. In there, we're talking about in SB 10. SB 10 allowed for the 10 units to be built on the lot, but we also mentioned ADUs at the end of that. Is that one on that lot, you'd be able to put 2 ADUs as well, right? So you could still max out at 12 there.
Yeah, the ADU law allows you to put 2 ADUs on a multifamily lot. That's how you get to 12. I wouldn't worry much about this. I think it's extremely unlikely that Hawthorne is going to voluntarily adopt,
Yes,
SB 10. I don't think any city in Southern California will, to be honest.
Makes sense. I had a question. We mentioned about SB 9, and we were talking about the occupants had to be there for 3 years prior to us doing, or couldn't happen if it's been within 3 years. And they said the city was not able to impose a penalty or there was no penalty if you did not live there for 3 years. The city doesn't have the ability to say, like we said, take up some kind of database where we say, hey, people have lived here for 3 years, and if you haven't, we can't impose a municipal penalty or anything like that, or we're not allowed to do anything of that regard. Okay.
No, it's specifically in SB in that section that says the city can't impose any other owner occupancy standard aside from the affidavit.
Okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
not good.
I mean, it's a sworn document under oath, but I can't imagine a perjury would ever go forward on that.
You just have to hope that the person who signs it hasn't actually read the law, which
Right. Yeah, they're hoping that the filing of the affidavit is, solemn enough that they're going to stick to it, but there's nothing beyond that.
And just a question at the end of this. So the goal, let's just say the overall idea of this lot division of these split lots is to increase rental units. It's not so much that these are targeting getting units that are going to be sold. We're not looking to build small condos. We're looking to build more rental units, correct?
No, not so. These can be sold separately.
Okay.
Yeah, they can be separately conveyed. That was one of the things that said even if they're adjoined, that's fine, but they as long as they can be separately conveyed.
So this is a different approach from ADUs. This is more responsive to the requests for ownership units, whereas ADUs was strictly rental units.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, again, yeah, thank you for the presentation. And I'm sure I'll have more questions for you all.
And I'm sure Greg will have all the answers.
Okay.
Before we move on, Maria has informed me that she's found the earthquake fault maps, and she's able to put it on the screen if you'd like to see it.
Yeah.
Please.
Hi, okay, let me unmute and let's see if this works. Let me move my screen over. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so it's under the California Department of Conservation, and it basically lets you know that on any computer you can check whether a property is within an earthquake hazard zone. So when you open it up, let me see, come on, when you open it up, this is what you see. So I've focused in the Hawthorne area, and these yellow marks are the fault lines. So you can see this one's the Inglewood fault and this one as well. And there's several, right, that are mapped. So it doesn't look like there's one that's actually right through Hawthorne. The other thing you can do is type in an address and it'll take you closer. And if there were a fault line right underneath, it would be shown here. But anyway, this is how we can check pretty rapidly through this app.
Yeah, so again, it doesn't show every single fault. It just shows the ones that are considered to be the most likely to cause damage or harm. And these are the ones that would have to be identified in order to disqualify for the purpose of that law.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to administrative items.
Oh, I had noticed before we move on. I'm not sure if it's too late, and I know the chairman didn't have the notes, but I believe we didn't open the public hearing for that public hearing item.
You
I'm
are
not sure if we
correct.
had any
We,
people for it or.
I believe you're correct, but I don't think we had anybody on. But it would probably, Sean, what's your call on that? Should we reopen that?
Yeah, I mean, we could reopen it and see if anyone's around. You know, it only takes a minute.
Okay,
If I didn't bore everybody away.
And with more interesting presentations we've had, don't you?
that was for the zone text amendment 2021 ZA02.
Yes.
Okay, we'll reopen a public hearing then, or we'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on it?
Again, if there's anyone in in our television audience that wants to call in, you can find the phone number. It's what, 310-349-2970. Good.
That's great.
We'll hold the line open for a few more seconds, and then because there's a time delay, you have to call now. Otherwise, by the time you hear that it's closed, it'll be long closed. Okay, that's 30 seconds from when we started this discussion, so we're good.
Okay, close the public hearing and we will go to the administrative item, excuse me, color approval, 11850 Inglewood Avenue, multifamily residential building. Since I don't have the script, I don't know who's going to do that. Maria, go ahead.
Can you hear me, commissioners?
Yeah, we can now.
Okay, and hopefully you can see the screen as well.
Yes.
I will be presenting the color consent application for a 4-unit apartment building at 11850 Inglewood Avenue. And it's located within actually a commercial zone, but it is an apartment building. And as you can see, this is the existing view of the apartment building. It needs some TLC, which is what the property owners are trying to do at this point, and repair some of the damage and definitely paint it. And if you can see from these existing views, down on the bottom right-hand photo, you'll see some of the natural stone that's on the property, and also it goes in the front. You can see it in the front. And there's this, I guess, screen. If you want to call it a screen, that also needs some painting and repair, which is what the property owners are intending to do. This is the proposed color scheme. And from the renderings, as you can see, it is going to be a huge improvement. They will be repairing any eaves that need to be repaired. They will be painting it in this blue aqua scheme. They are going to leave the stone natural. They'll just be cleaning it. They'll be painting the screen as well, and repairing it if it needs repairing. So overall, it'll look much better, of course. And I will go back with here at the recommendation. So staff does recommend that the Planning Commission approve the color palette as it has been proposed. as it will improve the look of this apartment building. And one of the things that staff is recommending as well is, if you see from those circled areas in red below, we do want the property owner to replant that area with some drought tolerant plants. So it looks a little better. It has a better view from the street, along with the paint. And staff believes that it would be a better look for this building. And that concludes my staff report. If you have any questions, and I will bring up the color scheme so you can see it once again.
Okay, does any of the commissioners have any questions of staff? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this?
My name is David Seamus. I'm the trustee of the trust that owns the property. If you have any questions of me, feel free to ask. The building hasn't been painted in probably 30 years, I think. Finally, my brother-in-law had owned the building. By the way, it's a 4-unit. I see the staff report says it was a 5-unit, 2-story, but it's a 4-unit. It's only got 4 kitchens over there. 1 3-bedroom, 1 2-bedroom, and 2 1-bedroom units. But it needs repair and painting for sure.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there any comments from the commissioners? Hearing none, then is there a motion to approve it?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, call for the vote, please.
Just a moment. Let me see what occurred. Hi, Commissioners. I will be calling for the vote to approve the proposed color scheme for this apartment building, and with the drought tolerant plantings. Chairperson Smith?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Alshanable?
Yes.
Commissioner Caraveo?
Yes.
Commissioner Richards?
Yes.
And Commissioner Ortiz?
Yes.
So that is 4 votes for the approval of this application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Items to be placed on future agendas. Pre-agenda for the meeting on November 3rd, 2020. There are none scheduled at this time. Okay, it's time for commissioner reports. Anybody have any report?
If I may really quickly, before the meeting started, I asked Mr. Lask if we are up to date with our ethics training. So if someone can just please check if we are up to date or not. And then I know that it's easy for us to take the test on our own. We can just be sent the link. That's what we did last time. So if that's the case, I'd just like for the link to be sent to us to upgrade or update our ethics training.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'll call for an adjournment of the meeting.
Chairman, can I have a moment, please? I just wanted to explain my absence there. Just as Oral Communications was closing, I saw a call come in. And so I took the call, thinking that it might be relevant to Oral Communications, but it was actually about the SB 9 presentation. So I didn't need to bring it on to the specific, but it was a very concerned citizen. And so I did have a good talk and gave her more information on that. So that's confirmation that, somebody was paying attention, and I'm very, grateful for that. I hope others are too. So I just wanted to report on that. And I apologize for missing, but I was distracted there.
Thank you, Greg. Okay,
And then I
Mr.
just
Carvajal?
wanted to say, all the staff is doing a great job and keep up the good work. And we appreciate the presentation and all the information that we learned today. And I also want to update you guys on Kal-El. He's has 2 teeth and he's crawling now. So he's getting into everything.
That's great.
Enjoy him.
That's it. And enjoy Halloween.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Commissioner.
Yeah,
Always glad to hear about your little boy.
right. I just wanted to say again, thanks for everyone for sticking in and through this meeting. I know this was a longer one with the presentation. I want to say I really applaud and appreciate staff
Yes.
for bringing the report to us about SB 8, 9, and 10. Personally, I've been looking into these bills for quite some time. Still a little disappointed in the direction in which they're going, mainly because of the way that small cities like us are not able to, decide what works best for us. So I think that's important for us to continue to not only keep aware of these things, but I also want to commend Rula for specifically the big thing of making sure that the public is aware of these things, putting it to a place where they're able to see and know what's going on about it, because far too often we get this stuff at the last minute. And, we got this presentation after it was already approved. Like nothing about the staff, but that's how a lot of stuff goes. So I appreciate you all for being, champions for a community, like we're supposed to, make sure the community knows what's going on here. And with that, hope everyone's doing well. Enjoy your Halloween, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you. So now we will adjourn the meeting at 7:12 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And Maria, could you call me tomorrow?
Yes. Call you tomorrow morning? I absolutely will, Commissioner Smith.
Please, I'd appreciate
Thank you, everyone.
All right, Sean.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
To stay home.
Not just to protect yourself, but to protect others.
Stay at least 6 feet away from other people. 2, arm's length. Just because you're at home
Doesn't mean that we can't be alone together.